So this is the second of my three-part video on meditation, triggers, softening, and self-compassion. So we're going to look at softening in this video. And why is softening important around triggers? A trigger is a defensive survival response. And I'll talk more about that in my first video. But essentially, there's something hard about it, reactive about it. It's impulsive. It takes you over, or takes the person over who's being triggered. Usually it's unconscious. It happens rapidly, and it's out of control in some sense, and the person experiencing it becomes the victim. In fact, in a way, everyone becomes the victim of triggers because it's not a conscious volitional act. It's like a mini disaster happening in the corner of the room, or it might have bigger impacts than that if it's someone who has more responsibilities in our society. So essentially, why does softening matter? Softening matters because there's part of what the trigger is, that reaction. There's something harsh about it, and there's something about it that's not able to see the moment because it's happening too fast, and it's associated with pain, right? So triggers, usually there's some kind of pain, right? It's a survival response, and there's pain involved. So if we harden ourselves to that, it can have the effect of a kind of a polarizing effect where we never get to really see what's happening there, right? And also in an embodied way, it's like things crashing against each other, right? There isn't an opportunity for resolution, integration, harmony, or a dance of healing to happen. For that, there needs to be a softening, right? So, and this ties into shadow work, which I'll summarize simply as work of seeing how we've projected parts of ourselves outside ourselves onto other people or situations. So partly it's pulling back into ourselves unhealed parts of ourselves, without which work it can be quite difficult to fully resolve certain triggers. So if you're wanting to work with triggers and heal them and transform them, part of that may require softening and reclaiming the parts of yourself that have been overly defended by these triggers, or that have not been acknowledged within yourself, that were needed by the triggers. Now, in most cases, I don't think much of that work can be done if there's a psychological inflexibility or hardness, right? So some kind of softening, gentleness around this, right? And this is where the third part comes into it, is self-compassion. Because if you're judging yourself, if you're repeatedly getting caught in family, and I call them family, but they could also be social and societal patterns of shame, or feelings of worthlessness and self-judgment, or even extreme forms of judging others, because the two are mirrored, judging of self or judging of other, it's going to be very difficult to soften. So why? Because softening involves some kinds of vulnerability or willingness to be present with something painful. Now, if I or you or someone has a pattern of harsh judgment, why would you want to soften? Why would you want to reveal something vulnerable? Because that judgment is going to just be jumping all over that and poking and prodding, and that's going to be incredibly painful. And honestly, the answer is your mind is not going to let you see that. It's not going to allow you to have the insights. So you're going to continue wondering, why do I do that? Oh my God. Or you're going to continue whatever your defensive pattern is of making it about other people. Well, if only they didn't do that, then I wouldn't do these things. If only they would learn, if only they would change, they're the problem, right? That's where many people go, right? And that doesn't solve anything either, because we're always, if there's a problem, there's and this is something I learned in couples therapy, there's always a reciprocal pattern that's happening, right? There may be responsibility for particular behaviors or particular parts of a cycle, but we're always participating in the cycle if there is one. So where's your role? How do you step off of that? If you're judging yourself harshly, you will not be able to see it. Your mind is not going to let you see it. It's going to protect you, which is great. So if you actually want to understand yourself better, this is something, a core element, self-compassion. So in terms of judging and the process of softening around that, if there is judgment or judgmental mind that you inherited or developed through stress or trauma or whatever caused that within you, part of the way through that is not to judge it, right? Then you've just got more judging judgment. But part of the way through the solution is to soften around it, to let there be a dissolving or dissolution. And that's very difficult to do if you just have your everyday mind, because the everyday mind functions with what it functions, which is probably the very thing, judging. Right? So with meditation, you can slow things down gently. You can notice yourself having a reaction if there's a trigger. You can notice the judging, and if you soften, it's like there's more spaciousness. Instead of a big block of concrete, it's a little bit more like water. There's more yielding quality to it. It becomes more workable, right? So this is why softening is so important, right? And yet it's the last thing most of us want to do, because the reflex when something hurts us is to lash out, to harden, to protect, right? And there's ways in which that is appropriate in the moment, right? But if we're trying to transform a trigger, come to a deeper understanding, or have a more intimate, healed, and whole relationship with someone else or a situation, the way that you're going to accomplish that is going to be by softening, right? So this is why softening is so important, and this is how meditation can support the softening, by creating a kind of ground, because to soften is going to go against our natural impulse, right? So we go into a place of meditation where we feel grounded, it's resourcing, we feel safe, hopefully, where we're meditating, and from there we allow ourselves to soften a little bit and then contemplate and bring into mind that situation and attempt to soften around it, right? To see what other solutions, what other perspectives, to see where's my responsibility in that, to see what other actions might I be able to take, to get curious about the whole process. And there's an enormous amount of wisdom and insight that can happen out of those moments of softening in meditation around an exploration of a trigger. This is why softening is so important. Thank you. I hope you've enjoyed this second of 3 videos.